Keep cool, Blade. I can take care of this.
Blade, you and I, we're gonna finish things.
Oh, John. You think I'm such a naughty, naughty girl.
Sin Episodes Emergence is a first-person shooter released in 2006 by Ritual Entertainment for the PC.
This isn't working.
And only the PC. It was the sequel to Sin, a Quake 2 shooter released in 1998, also by Ritual Entertainment. Sin was an IP of Ritual's own making, despite the fact that they mostly work with other IPs, such as Legacy of Kain, Star Trek Elite Force 2 and Heavy Metal. Suffice to say, amidst licensing deals that even touched the Blair Witch Project, Sin was cooked up internally. It was their own baby. At least it was, until 2020, when Night Dive Studios acquired the rights and republished the game. They're currently working on a remastered version. As for Sin Episodes, Ritual planned to release 9 episodic games that would tell a larger story, with player choices affecting the outcomes of later episodes. This was no doubt drawing inspiration from Half-Life 2's episodic content. Somewhat ironically, as the original Sin suffered poor sales thanks to releasing at the same time as Half-Life 1 back in 1998. And somewhat cruelly, history was fated to repeat itself. The first of the planned 9 Sin episodes released around the same time as Half-Life 2 Episode 1. Talk about scheduled for disaster. Whoever was doing the release timetables for Ritual either grossly overestimated the appeal of their games or got handed the wrong calendar at a staff meeting. Leaning even more into Half-Life's shadow, Sin Episodes made use of the Source engine. I've previously gushed over how much I like the Source engine. Its solid physics system and dated but beautiful graphics potential. It's a good engine and was a great choice for an ambitious but staggered FPS project. The game had some interesting marketing even for the time, namely getting Canadian fetish glam model Bianca Beauchamp to model as the game's primary antagonist. But the reason you've probably never heard or forgot about this game is simple. Only 1 episode came out. Ritual Entertainment crumbled after episode 1, and not even a year later they were acquired by Mumbo Jumbo to work on more casual games like Little Farm and Samantha Swift, the hidden... It's a hidden object game, fucking hell. These guys used to make shit like this! Anyway, I better get to the gameplay because the clock is ticking. As first-person shooters go, it's got the most important thing nailed down. When I fire a gun, the bullet goes where I'm aiming. None of this wind resistance, drop-off or interstellar drift bullshit. Save that for the rocket launcher, which... this game doesn't have, but I'm jumping ahead. Each weapon features an alternate attack, such as a deadly penetrating shot from the Magnum to a fun ricochet shotgun blast, which is useless, but way too much fun for me to care. You can also execute a melee attack with Q, and true to life it's just a straight up stupid move if you're already carrying a loaded gun. The animation is fairly clunky and slow. However, when you do hit something, it's like being smacked by Captain fucking Cisco. These security guards are entirely crumple zone. You also move quickly by default, no sprinting required. Just bring this back for every game, please. Let me run fast by default and hold a button when I want to slow down. When you combine all these things I've mentioned together, the result is satisfying and solid gunplay. It's basic, but that doesn't matter. It's one of the game's strengths. What does matter, however, is the weapon selection. Where is it? Remember Bioshock Infinite, where you were limited to carrying 2 weapons at once, when there were about 8 types of gun? Well, Sin Episodes has the opposite problem. You can carry all the weapons at once, but there's 3 of them. Now, of course, like any linear shooter, you space the guns out so they get more and more impressive as the game progresses. Up until you get an amazing gun for a disappointingly short amount of time at the end of the game, you know the drill. This is one element that doesn't translate well to the episodic content, because there isn't one fun gun. You know what I mean? The bullshit wacky Tesla cannon, or the torpedo launcher, or the cryolator. The sort of gun that would have fit in this universe quite well. Hell, given the game's story, some sort of bioweapon toxin spewer would be perfect. That being said, the weapons you do have all feel absolutely great to fire. The shotgun is responsive, but slow enough to feel like a heavier weapon. It has quick drop-off in effectiveness, so it's really for close quarters, which I like. A shotgun is a close-range weapon, it's an FPS rule. The SMG is solid, if inaccurate, dealing a lot of damage quickly, but you ain't doing shit unless you learn burst control. But for me, the highlight is Blade's signature Magnum pistol. It's got a chunky, futuristic look to it. The sound is absolutely glorious when you fire this thing, not to mention when you let loose one of the uranium rounds. Its accuracy makes it viable in every situation, and its bullets pierce multiple targets. It's one of those rare occasions in gaming where the standard sidearm is not just a backup, it's my go-to gun. There are also grenades. You're never told you have them, which is why I didn't throw any until halfway through the game. They're a combination of frag and incendiary, which means they do damage and they're fun. The enemy buffet has only marginally more choice than the weapons, and this is where the weakness of episodic content hits hardest. 70% of the time you'll be fighting private security, and I don't mean near future sci-fi cybernetic private security, no I mean fucking Paul Blart. It's wave after wave of warehouse security dudes. Now I am used to enemies progressing throughout a game, and maybe they had more selection planned for later episodes, but it's a definite weakness to have most of the force opposing you be carbon copy bad guys until halfway through the game. At least they switch between all the same weapons you have access to, all 3 of them. Some of them have protective headgear, making 2 headshots necessary, and if I worked for an evil biochem company that made mutants, I'd want a safety helmet too. Especially if they got me to test out their fucking jetpack. Oh, okay, now we're talking. These are the guys that pass basic training and watch The Mandalorian religiously. They don't have heavy armor, which makes sense because flying ain't easy for a human being. A jetpack trooper on their own is basically just more vulnerable infantry. But a few of them together can quickly create kill zones where reducing their numbers without taking cover can be difficult. Unfortunately, they don't really fly about very much. They sort of hover. Less angel of death, more vicious hummingbird. I feel like they needed to be more mobile to be a greater threat. Normally flying enemies are too annoying. These guys aren't annoying enough. The final tier of more security is the Syntech Heavy Trooper, and probably my favourite enemy in the game purely for personal reasons. I love power armors, especially more grounded ones. I'm that guy who thought the best Iron Man suit was the one he built in the fucking cave. The Syntech Troopers can take a fair amount of punishment thanks to their armor plating. They're equipped with a minigun and can quickly tear you a new one if you sit still, but unlike the guards, you can always hear them coming. Again though, no variation in enemy types. They all have miniguns. A flamethrower variant would have been great. Think about it, minigunners have reason to hang back, flamethrowers have cause to get in close. It creates instant tactical variation, and not being able to pick up their miniguns is an absolute slap in the face.
How dare you!
The armor must still be in beta, because when you kill these guys, they explode. Just straight up detonate. I guess those suits don't run on AAAs. The second group of combatants are the mutants. Genetic experiments of Syntech. They can be a little bullet spongy for my tastes, but they're meant to be because their threat lies in closing the distance between you and them. I love the way they move, leaping up to platforms and rushing at you with their claws. Pair this with trying to gun them down before they reach you and you have instant tension. They can also kick objects like trash cans in your direction as well.
Garbage day!
As if getting mauled to death wasn't bad enough. The mutants range from small spitters to giant hulking monstrosities, the latter of which have some fun moves, but I'm sad to say there are only 2 of them in the whole game. The AI isn't too bad. It's a bit dodgy at times, sure, but for the most part they get the job done. They try to find cover and will run away from conveniently placed explosives, but often not fast enough. Sometimes enemies just stand there, oblivious you're looking right at them until you do something. But it excels when mutants are hurling objects at you, working to corner you, or enemies try to flush you out of an area by sending one in to rush you, or lock down doorways by taking up wide formations to cover it from all angles. Syntech will lay ambushes for you as well. I made it through this construction yard 3 times fighting off a dozen guys, only for the last dude with a shotgun to jump me every single time. What I do like is that enemies can be forced down to their knees if you shoot their leg. They'll keep firing until they can eventually get up. That's locational damage, I like that. And look at this, I tried to block these guys from opening the door so I could self-care in the closet, and they got fed up with trying the door so they came in through the back one. Scared the shit out of me, I love it. The humans are meant to be strong in numbers, but weak alone, versus the mutants who are dangerous even on their own. What I like is that Syntech security will actively shoot mutants, because they're as much a danger to them as they are to you. This can make the difficulty of fights quickly change based on who you help first. If you kill the mutants, the more deadly melee combatants are gone, but now you're being shot at. Besides your usual explosive barrels, there are also mutagen barrels. Guess what they're filled with? No, they're filled with mutagen, green gas that's probably toxic.
Don't breathe this.
But if you should breathe some in, it heightens your senses with an effect very similar to slow-mo from Dread. It's not just your standard time slow effect. You can act a bit faster than your enemies, and the more you inhale, the greater the effect. Likewise, enemies don't enjoy breathing it. You can hear them coughing, and they'll actively try to move out of it. What I do like is that mutagen ties directly into the story and the aforementioned mutants. That's always a plus from me. And the other type of gas is blue, and this is how you restore health. There's a neat system where you can find metagas containers and plug them in dispensers, but it's got that annoying hold E to heal mechanic that just ruins the pacing of the game. This is one mechanic that hasn't aged well. You can also shoot the canisters to release the gas around you, but inhaling it in this way is even slower than snorting it from the wall. Supposedly metagas actually damages mutants. How or why you'd ever test this, I don't know. The level design is nice, with some memorable segments. I'll talk about the visuals later, but for now I'll say the pacing, layout and level of interaction in maps is good for an FPS. There's enough cover and open spaces to make each section interesting. Even choke points have ways to overcome them. There's a definite linearity to the game. You follow one path and that's it, but it doesn't feel boring. Check out this segment where your buddy cop Jessica gets you into a container, lifted by a crane so she can ferry you across the docks. Jetpack troopers come at you from angles and you can shoot out the open cargo container. It's a very simple but nice moment that shakes up the action. And look, if you fall out you get some fun dialogue. And she does go to reset the cargo container for you. Now you could reload a save, but rather than be boring, I ran all the way back round because I like the effort that went into this. Unfortunately, the crane bugs out and I get Skyrim physics murdered in about 5 seconds. The elevator shootout and scaling the outside of Supremacy Tower, another fantastic set piece to play across. There are lots of little details in the levels too, like payphones where you can dial numbers you see in adverts and get voice recordings. The vending machines will eventually dispense a healing can. There's some platforming and environmental hazards. Some are just absolutely terrifying. But whoever tested the pipe sections and said they were okay needs to take an introspective moment. You can't jump properly from cylindrical surfaces, so you slide off the pipes as if you're oiled up. Sin Episodes gameplay is simplistic to say the least, but it does it well. The gunplay is exactly what you'd want from a game like this. The table is laid beautifully, but the dishes are clearly incomplete because it's the first episode. The AI is good enough that you don't feel stagnation until right before the game changes pace. And it meets my absolute first-person shooter quality test of having a moment where you keep dying, a point you can't get past until you go in there and John Wick that room. And then a guy with a shotgun pops out. Okay, that's the gameplay wrapped up. Anything else would be superfluous. Speaking of, let's move on to the story and characters. Now, if there is a story for Sin Episodes Emergence, I can't find it. It's definitely in there somewhere, I've looked. I've used an electron microscope. That's the same one used by Peter Parker in Spider-Man, the first one. Okay, so I exaggerate slightly. It's just that the story is told poorly, and is also only 1/9 of the entire story they had planned. The year is 2037. You play Colonel John R. Blade of Hardcorp's Private Security, the biggest badass in the dystopian megacity of Freeport. You've been captured by Alexis Sinclair, the CEO of a big pharma corp. Very big pharma. And she's injected you with something blue. With amazing timing, Hardcorp's newbie Jessica Cannon shoots her way into the medical labs to bust you out. Okay, real talk, this is a nice opening sequence that establishes the villains, her associate, and the second half of the buddy cop duo. Jessica is a rookie, but a badass. Turns out whatever Alexis injected you with has caused you to hallucinate. But it's not all bad because you end up hallucinating her. And what will inevitably become the thumbnail for this video. I'm going to touch on the character design later, don't worry. Jessica reasons you need to track down someone who might know what they injected you with, namely Radek. For some brain-dead reason, a hallucinating half-dead cop injected with something from an evil biochem company called Syntech is the perfect man for the job. So Jessica tells the district security how she really feels and drives you there. Calling him from HQ, JC says maybe you need to see a doctor.
Is exactly why you need to bring him back to HQ now.
Sorry, we're losing you.
You can probably tell which character I like more. I'm gonna summarize the rest. Syntech are working on illegal mutagenic experiments to change people into monsters. But there's some sort of overarching scheme behind it all. Maybe Alexis is working on some sort of enhanced human, or maybe she just wants a horde of mutants under her control. It's not explained, and of course it wouldn't be, because this is episode 1 of 9. So you just fight your way through until Alexis reveals she injected you with something different than the mutagen you've seen so far. Something to unlock your true potential. The story is basically non-important, it doesn't matter. Let's talk about the characters. Colonel John R. Blade is a 99% mute protagonist, unlike in the original game. And this is a definite weakness, because you want a wisecracking action hero to say stupid shit. Look at him, how can this guy not have anything to say while he's running around with a shotgun? And everyone, and I mean everyone you run into, seems to know who you are.
I know your reputation, Blade.
You and me, Blade.
It's Blade!
Next up is JC, the guy in the chair, who while has the most logical take on what's going on and how to approach it, he's kind of a dick. Jessica Cannon is the Alex Vance of the game. She doesn't take shit, she's actually got your back and helps push the story forward. But she's also a bit of a reckless hothead, which does land you both in sticky situations.
Oh, I'm full of surprises too, you evil conniving bitch.
Kill them.
She pops in and out throughout the game, doing that typical Half-Life thing where she can't join up with you for some reason.
I can't squeeze through, but I've got something for you.
There's no fucking way she can't fit through that gap. What the fuck? Oh, so to get away and escape you can Sullivan your way out, but to come save my ass? Oh no. No, that window's too fucking tight. She does eventually join you as a combat ally, and I really dig the buddy cop feeling, but it's fucking hacksawed by the fact Blade remains silent. They didn't need to be shooting their mouths off every 5 seconds, but they needed to be back and forth. Most importantly, she's actually funny.
So what do you think, Blade? Rookie of the Year material or what?
And never once do you feel like she can't handle herself. Until she gets captured off screen by Radek, which is honestly so disappointing. She's working on hacking a system one moment, you leave, and then she's captured. It feels like she becomes incapable solely so Radek can inject her with something and set up the next episode, where you've probably got to find a cure. If we'd seen her get captured, show her putting up a fight. It gives credit to the character, that she didn't just suddenly forget how to fire a gun, but that the antagonist outwitted or outgunned her. To do it off screen and make her go from this to this is just lazy. Radek is a bit of a legitimate businessman, with some flair for the dramatic. Less Quark, more Tony Montana. You see, Radek was a drug kingpin, but now he's working for Syntech, since nobody knows how to mass produce chemicals like he does. He seems to have his head screwed on because he wants to kill Blade rather than toy with him. Radek doesn't get much screen time, and it's a shame because I'd like to know more about his character and the backstory he seems to have with Blade. He is, however, cheesy enough to have his own villain submarine.
Get my sub ready.
I guess it's time to talk about Alexis Sinclair, who has a trait that automatically puts her in my good graces. No, it's not what you're thinking. She's simultaneously a biochemist, genetic engineering pioneer, and CEO of a billion-dollar pharma company.
I'm something of a scientist myself.
It's fair to say she's a bona fide genius. And truthfully, I think she's a great villain. And remember, I'm saying that based on 1/9 of a story that will never be finished. I'm taking the small amount of time she has on screen and giving it a thumbs up. While she may be a genius geneticist, she's also a deluded visionary. But most of all, she comes across as flamboyantly superior.
John. It's nice to see you again. Though it did take a little longer than I expected. I'm not often disappointed.
Honestly, this scene right here is perfect. The music, the hologram, the taunting, teasing dialogue. She's the only character to call Blade by his first name. It's to disarm and just remind him that she's the one in control. And after this, she blows open the mutant containment on her own ship, just to show off what it is she's working towards. That's a level of mind-blowing crazy you have to respect. There's obviously been criticism about Alexis's design, and if she had been a straight-edge, no-nonsense businesswoman, I'd agree with those criticisms. But she isn't. She's flirty and playful, even when she's deadly serious. It's like she doesn't take you, the protagonist, seriously. And that is great. It's unintentionally meta for a game like this. But it also shows how in control she feels. She taunts you, mocks you, like it's all one big power trip. She owns a building called Supremacy Tower, for fuck's sake. She's showing off how superior and untouchable she is. And if you think that wouldn't carry over to her wardrobe, you've clearly never worked in biochemistry. But on the other end of the spectrum, Jessica Cannon didn't need to be dressed like this. Don't get me wrong, I dig the outfit, but it doesn't fit the character. She's a fucking ginger badass with a submachine gun who crashes her patrol car into a fucking building so that she doesn't have to open the door. I don't need to see her thong ride up to be into the character. At this point, I'm already there, dude. Armour her up a bit, give her some tactical gear, not a tactical midriff.
Get your mind out of the gutter, Blade.
Okay, I gotta admit that's pretty funny, but it still would have worked if she'd been wearing this. But I'm also no prude. All I'm gonna say is, if you're gonna do costume design like this, you have to go all the way. Give Radek an open chest suit or something. The man works for a supervillain and hypes up mutagen. He's already extra, especially with that facial hair. The story ends on a cliffhanger. As I said, Jessica forgets how to fight, gets captured, and she is also injected. Only she's injected with something really bad. Probably 5G. After that, you fight a helicopter. Yes, really. Piloted by Radek. We see her next time on Sin, which will never happen. What I want to stress here is that the story is not the appeal of the game, because just like Dark Messiah, the game needed more dialogue and more story. But it's an honest shame because I love mad science, genetic experiments and dystopian sci-fi. And it feels like there is some good world building going on in the details, just not in the story. What I do like, however, are the characters. I feel like they got a lot of shit for being stereotypical, but that's kind of the appeal for me. If anything, I feel the game needed to take itself less seriously in all aspects and wade into the cheesy stereotypes. Let's move on to the sound and music. The musical score of Sin is surprisingly strong. Composed by Zach Bellica, there's some ambient tracks that are above average for FPS music, being a nice mix of orchestra and synthetic sounds. But the character theme music is truly something else. For Blade and Jessica, there's this fantastic returning motif. The industrial, grungy sound and plucky drums undercut by biting strings are ideal for the underdogs at hardcorps patrolling the streets of the mega city. For Alexis, classical is the weapon of choice, with a fantastic orchestra that eventually explodes into this amazing choir. It's perfect for the character's superiority complex and is a quintessential supervillain track. But the biggest surprise for Sin Emergence is its banging main theme, sung by Sarah Ravenscroft, who has no other credits as far as I can tell.
What's the world coming to when everything's going the way of the gun?
It's a great fucking song and probably one of the most memorable menu themes ever as video games go. The sound design is superb. You feel totally immersed in the world you're navigating and all the ambient noise is appropriate. The lapping of the sea and the sound of the harbour greet you after the prologue. The unnatural background beeping of the clandestine shipboard laboratory. And when Alexis flicks that switch, releasing the mutants as you run for your life, the screams and sounds of gunfire are wonderfully horrific. You honestly feel like you're in the middle of a containment breach. The active sounds are as good as the passive ones. Just listen to that uranium shot. I've played games where the guns sound so weak, and while Sin Emergence is guilty of a lot of underdone features, sound design isn't one of them, especially the guns. But also the whirring jetpacks, the miniguns around the corner, the mutant cries, the sounds of machinery, they all work to bring the world of Freeport City to life. So unsurprisingly, the voice work is just as good. Yes, it's all cheesy, but that is part of the charm, and the ability of the actors shines through that cheese. Jen Taylor of Left 4 Dead and Halo voices Jessica Cannon, perfectly selling the optimistic hothead and brings welcome energy to the game's combat companion. Billy O'Sullivan and David Scully are great as JC and Radek respectfully.
This isn't over, Blade.
But Hannah Logan steals the show as Alexis, always playful and melodramatic throughout. She is the classic supervillain, and it's a shame her schemes ended here.
Oh, John.
The enemy voice work is just as good.
I'm not even supposed to be here today!
Their voice lines change as well depending on the situation, with the last man standing often challenging you mano a mano. And when these guys get lit on fire, holy shit, I feel bad for them. For a game where every other area looks good but comes up short in one way or another, the sound and music are absolutely on point. I think graphics are a really boring thing to judge a game on, so I'm doing visuals and spectacle, and that's how dazzling and interesting it is to me within the style of the game. Sin Episodes doesn't quite get a 10 like JC Denton for a couple of reasons. First, the bad. There are a few smoke and particle glitches, and that's honestly acceptable for the time it came out in, but you don't love to see it. Some of the areas are darkly lit, which is acceptable. Dark Messiah had dungeons that were pitch fucking black, but what you also had in Dark Messiah was night vision. In Sin Emergence, you don't. You don't even have a flashlight. You can always find your way around, but it can be a bit of a strain to see in the cargo ship or the sewers. Okay, the technical shortcomings are done, on to the positives. For 2006, the fidelity of visuals are on par with Half-Life 2. Good texture resolution for the time, simple but gorgeous maps populated with detailed models. The lighting effects for me are what make the visuals stand out, working together with everything else to create true atmospheres, even with the low polygon maps. On the overall aesthetic of the levels, while mundane, the docks are well designed and colourful enough to stick in your mind. There is enough variety in the rooms and buildings you pass through, but the length of these levels mean you can get tired of the visuals. For me, the cargo ship level is where the game actually starts to show off its aesthetic potential. It moves you through rusty bulkheads and engine rooms to clean metallic laboratories. The shift in environment reels you back into the game. The whole thing reeks of X-Files and Fringe, with mobile labs being standard practice for clandestine experiments. And when the mutants escape and the entire map undergoes a bloody shift in tone, it's just horribly wonderful. Supremacy Tower is the payoff set up by the more mundane dock levels. Corporate marble, stained glass windows, hologram terminals. There's an almost Art Deco look to the place, and it provides a stark contrast to everything that came before. It culminates in climbing the outside of the tower, which leads me to mention another technical point. Just look at that view distance. Look at the care and love that went into this dystopian cityscape. They knew that most of scaling the tower would have the player facing inwards, but for the players that look out and over the city, they crafted a treat, simple yet detailed. Of course, I have to praise the character design. The roster is small, but every character model is beautiful for the era. I would say one or two of these surpass the standard Source Engine norm for the time. With the limited roster of enemies, making them each stand out was essential, and I'm glad to say they accomplished that goal and then some. In fact, despite what you may think, I spent more time trying to get close-ups of the heavy troopers than I did Alexis's tits.
Yeah, I got it going on, but let's stick to business, okay?
Alright, that was for review purposes. I was trying to be funny.
Never would have figured you for an ass man, Blade.
Fuck's sake, it's summary time, and I'm going to start with the negatives because I like to end on a positive note. The two biggest offences. First, the game is obviously incomplete, as only 1 in 9 episodes ever released. Secondly, it's too short. Now, playing back through this again without rushing through it, I have about 3 hours playtime. I tend to do longer playtimes thanks to exploration and just dicking about. I once spent an hour trying to jump over a moving jeep in Crisis while throwing a grenade down into it, spinning and watching it explode. So yeah, my playtimes run a little long. But even with extra review footage and reloads, my playtime was short. Most people could knock this out in 2 hours. It was expensive back then for 2 hours of entertainment, and I've never seen it on sale. Despite being short, the stagnation in the initial dock levels can set in fast. They needed to have enemy variety at least to shake things up. This is countered a little by the simple yet solid level design, but you're going to be fighting dudes in dull warehouses for a while before the fun and spectacle kicks in. There is simply not enough dialogue or story, even for the establishing episode. But the dialogue we do get is gloriously cheesy and delivered with top-notch voice acting for the most part. It's got good gunplay, no frills, but that's a strength. It leaves it up to you to move and shoot like an action hero. Again, the foundation is there, it just needed more. This is basically everything right and wrong with Sin Emergence. Everything for a truly great FPS is there, it's just incomplete. I've heard the tone differs a lot from the original, in that the original Sin was super wacky, but I actually like the tone. I think it's one of its strengths, and maybe we'd have seen it get progressively weirder as episodes went on. Can I recommend Sin Episodes Emergence? Not unless you absolutely want to experience a part of forgotten FPS history. If so, it's really nice for the era, and I still think worth a look today, but it will never be finished, and on a purely bang for buck level, it's not enough. I was immensely disappointed when I learned the first was also the final installment. As I said at the start, Night Dive Studios have taken over the original and they handled that well. Their remaster of System Shock looks good too, so who knows? Maybe it's not too late to resurrect Sin. A flawed and dated, but ultimately satisfying and fast-paced game. The squashed potential of the series represents a death blow to a niche developer trying something new and failing thanks to poor sales and wishful thinking, but it remains a bright thread of the 2000s, and I love it. When I started this review, I didn't realise that Mumbo Jumbo, the casual gaming company that acquired Ritual in 2007, was actually a split-off from Ritual in 2001. The guy who left to make his own company comes back to buy you out. Wow. Imagine that fucking meeting.
I started this company.
But whatever, they were a creative bunch, so I'm just hopeful they've all gone on to make more games. I'm sure they're doing fine. Oh,